Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for a very special web event. I'd now like to pass the floor to our presenter today, Sean Blanton, the Product Marketing Manager with Mojo Networks. Sean comes to us and is formerly our Systems Engineering Manager for the Western region, and he has 5 years of systems engineering experience. Today, Sean's going to be talking about the future of Wi-Fi and where the cloud-managed platform really fits into this model.
Welcome, everybody watching right now and watching into the future. As Erica mentioned, my name is Sean Blanton, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about the future of Wi-Fi and, as Erica mentioned, where the cloud is playing a role in that. And really, we're going to make the assertion that the cloud is the future of Wi-Fi. It's where it's going, and it's really because it powers the architectures that are required to really deliver upon today's challenges and even tomorrow's challenges as it relates to enterprise Wi-Fi. So we're going to look at some statistics. We're going to understand where the market is going. And then we're really going to focus our time today talking about the benefits of cloud Wi-Fi. There are a lot of people out there who have not yet made the shift, and as a result, may be unaware of the benefits that come from moving to a cloud platform. So we're really going to dig deep, and we're going to understand how the cloud can help. And then we'll end with a quick walkthrough through the Mojo Cloud. We'll be touching upon a couple of key ideas and really just giving you a look at how we at Mojo Networks have moved our Wi-Fi architecture into the cloud and what we can deliver. So let's first start by really taking a wide-angle lens at the industry and looking at it from the perspective of analysts who really have the benefit of seeing everything and talking to everybody and getting a really good picture of what's going on today and be able to make predictions about what's going on tomorrow. So interestingly enough, when groups like IDC, Gartner, Forrester, when they're looking at wireless as a whole, they're seeing wireless as a whole with a projected growth rate of about 5% from the years 2014 into 2018. And that's okay. You know, that's good growth for a very mature market, and it's really indicative of that. Wireless is a very mature market, but if you start to peel back the layers and you start to look at some of the micro trends within wireless as a whole, you start to see some really exciting things. And in particular, we're seeing that cloud Wi-Fi is really growing within the larger wireless business. So you can see here, cloud managed business Wi-Fi, both infrastructure and being delivered through managed services, will reach close to $653 million in 2014. That's what was found 2 years ago. They're projecting $2.5 billion by 2018. And that's 45% growth over that time span. And that is significantly higher than the aggregate growth of the wireless business as a whole. And so generally speaking, what we're seeing is that on-prem or controller-based architectures are really starting to stagnate. And in some cases are even dropping in terms of the overall growth of the wireless market. Cloud is really picking up steam. And a big reason why is because more and more organizations are starting to evaluate the cloud. If we take a look back into the past, cloud Wi-Fi is by no stretch a new idea. It's been around for at least the last decade in various iterations. And what we found was that it really was quickly adopted by first small distributed enterprises, and that moved into quick serve retail, and more recently into K-12. And a big reason for that is because quick serve retail, K-12, are highly distributed. They're highly distributed, which means that they have physical locations that are widespread, whether it's through a school district, schools that may have dozens, sometimes hundreds of schools across a district, across a larger region. Certainly quick serve retail, where you might have hundreds or thousands of locations spread across the country, even spread across the globe. And what's really keen about all three of these particular industries is that they tend to have very lean IT staffs. And they often, in some cases, have a reliance on regional and national MSPs, managed service providers. And so all these things combined have really led these particular industries and industries similar to these to start adopting a cloud Wi-Fi architecture. But what we're really finding today is that now we're seeing higher education, large enterprise, the more traditional campus deployments starting to evaluate cloud. And this is why certain analysts are able to see and project such an amazing growth for cloud Wi-Fi in particular. It's really because these large groups that can have tens of thousands of access points distributed across their campuses throughout the nation or throughout the globe are capable and really are looking for the cloud to help solve their challenges. So these groups are really going to drive future growth. Now, interestingly enough, there's another trend that these analysts are starting to see, and that certainly here at Mojo Networks we're hearing more and more from our customers, and it's this shift towards what's known as an operationalized IT. So if you take a step back and you look at IT in a larger picture, you can really break down just about every individual function of IT through a workflow that follows planning, setup, monitoring, troubleshooting, and optimization. And that workflow is cyclical. It tends to be that no matter where you're looking at it, from a networking perspective, from an endpoint perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, uh, all of these different elements are cycling through this workflow, and you get to a point where you're back to the beginning and you're planning for the next iteration. Now, what's really interesting is that when you take a look at the workflow from the big picture, and this is often overlooked when you think about current networking and endpoint and management functions, is that monitoring and troubleshooting make up the vast majority of this particular workflow. In fact, estimates show that about 80% of any day of any average IT operator, IT administrator, is focused on monitoring and troubleshooting. So this is a really interesting statistic that's being found, and it's being identified through this shift towards operational IT, which in a nutshell is the idea that we can start to measure what was previously immeasurable in terms of daily tasks, functions, operations that need to be pushed through. And by measuring them, we can begin to understand and predict their behavior. Through that, we can automate, and we can really start to leverage our resources in the best way possible and leverage our systems to really function on their own. These combining ideas, this shift towards looking at cloud, and very particularly in the context of Wi-Fi, but then also looking at the idea that IT is moving towards this operational component, is really driving a new approach to the networking planes. And what we see here is that the traditional planes, data, control, management, they're being virtualized, they're being opened up. And as a result, we're starting to see the emergence of two new planes, the analytics plane and the automation plane. And it's these two planes in particular, again, analytics, the idea that I can take massive amounts of data, every little bit and byte that's being picked up on the network, that's being picked up throughout my organization. It can be stored, it can be analyzed, and through analysis, we can start to correlate certain components and really get a clear picture of what's happening. When we have that, we can automate. We can start pushing buttons that push buttons, that push buttons, that push buttons. And this is the key. This gets us an opportunity to operationalize IT. So today, we're really going to look at what Mojo Networks is doing. Certainly, as it relates to data control and management, it's important to understand how that architecture is put together. And really, truly, when we say the future of Wi-Fi is cloud, it's because look at this architectural approach, this new architectural approach to the networking planes. Cloud enables operationalized IT. Without the cloud, the analytics plane and the automation plane cannot take advantage, cannot move at the fullest level that they're structured to do so. And because of that, you can't achieve your end goal. So let's talk about cloud Wi-Fi in particular. Let's really dive deep into what are the benefits. Why are we moving to the cloud? We've already talked about the end goal, right? The end goal is to achieve this idea of automation and to really take advantage of the analytics plane. But we can look at some very tangible benefits as well. And we've really broken it down into 6 really core concepts: scalability, manageability, IT agility, complexity, security, and economics. So let's take a look at each one in particular. So first, scalability. This is often where most people go when they're thinking about cloud. right? And cloud as a medium to deliver certain services. Why is scalability such a fundamental idea to the cloud? Well, it's really because when you go to the cloud, resources, that is memory, processing, disk space, these resources are seemingly unlimited. There are data center providers out there that have spent years and years perfecting their systems, building in automation, building in the capabilities to deliver resources in a very elastic way. So what you have when you go to the cloud is this ability to tap into resources at any level whenever you need. And often your ability to ebb and flow to gain access to those resources and to scale back on those resources is directly in line with your need for them. So this is a huge, huge benefit because you're not paying for unused resources and you're not finding yourself limited by the current resource stack that you have. You're growing on demand, you're growing linearly, and you're not following the step function of different steps in terms of your growth. The other thing that's really unique about the cloud is that because of this ability to grow, to remove these artificial boundaries, that is anything surrounding excess planning, excessive new appliances, the costs associated to deploying and configuring and integrating them all. We also take a look at, very specifically to Wi-Fi, the traffic data path. And this is really important because no longer are we bound to pass traffic through the system. The Mojo architecture is designed with a controller-less, or sometimes known as a controller-free principle. The idea that our access points are completely separated from the management plane. As such, data has the opportunity to travel wherever I want it to travel. In many cases, it's a local breakout. And this is where, when we go back to early adopters of cloud Wi-Fi, there's been a lot of adoption there because local breakout is a huge advantage for a highly distributed environment. But because data is breaking out locally, we actually have a flexible option. We can allow it to do so and travel the path that we've defined. But we can also tunnel that traffic. And we can choose which access points tunnel that traffic. And there are a lot of different ways and different approaches to doing so. But the key benefit is that you have the choices. And that is very, very important as we look at networks of tomorrow. How do we handle the influx of new devices, of new capacity that is required as a result? So this is a really, really important idea. Scalability, it's not just about how many access points can I hook onto a management interface. It's really about how do I grow? How do I do it dynamically? And also, how am I looking at and storing data so that I can really make sense of what's going on and I can start to automate. So we're really looking at those new planes here in the context of scalability. So then we look at manageability, right? This idea that, how do I manage the system as a whole? The first thing that goes away when you make a move to the cloud is that we don't have appliances any longer. Our hardware is centered around our access points, the number of APs that we need. So this is huge. This is really huge because appliances are heavy. They take space to deploy. And what can be challenging about them is that they have boundaries. With the cloud, our cloud ops team, the team that we've designed, that we've trained specifically for managing and upkeeping our infrastructure, they handle all of this, so you don't have to. It's time spent elsewhere from your team. It's less people you need on your team. It's certainly less specific expertise. And this really frees you up to tackle more and bigger challenges. So we remove appliances. We're also automating the process of upgrading both software and firmware. I want to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about a vulnerability. Because one of the things that is often overlooked when we think about cloud is this idea of security. Now, we're going to talk about security moving forward. But when it comes to management, security management are hand in hand. Heartbleed, you may remember, was a vulnerability that was identified back in the fall of 2014. It had actually been present since 2011. It was discovered in the fall of 2013. And it was a vulnerability that specifically attacked the OpenSSL framework, which obviously affects transport layer security. It was a big deal. right? It really affected a large number of devices because it affected both server and client communication, and it effectively enabled data leakage by allowing more data to spill out during certain forms of communication than would otherwise be allowed. There was a huge effort by the security community to identify it, to provide the tools to make sure that you were free from it. And when you think about the cloud, and we'll use Mojo as a specific example, when Hartley was announced, we were able to fully upgrade our entire cloud infrastructure. We're talking 7+ data centers worldwide, thousands of customers, tens of thousands of access points worldwide. We were able to adopt a fix for that entire infrastructure in 3 days. We were free from that vulnerability. We were protecting our customers and their data within 3 days' time. I would stake my job on the fact that there are probably controller systems out there that have not yet addressed the Heartbleed issue. We're almost in 2 years of this particular vulnerability being out there. And the reason why is because any of you out there who have managed controller systems know that upgrading is a hassle. It's challenging. It's a manual, step-by-step process, and it's a one-by-one process. So it takes a tremendous amount of time, and a lot of us don't have the change control windows to accomplish such a task. Not to mention that Wi-Fi becoming ever increasingly vital to the business as a whole. If we damage it, if we knock it down, there could be serious repercussions. So this is a really important idea, and I spend time here because it's often overlooked that manageability is not just about pushing configs. It's really about keeping the system as a whole intact and reliable. Obviously, of course, configuration is key, and in the cloud, we're able to unify that configuration. What that means is that from a single point of view, I have the opportunity to push configurations that affect my access, my security, and my engagement. And all of that combined is essential. I'm not bouncing from screen to screen. And this also builds in inherent integrations that I don't have to build. So now let's look at IT agility. This is really interesting too, because when you think about a growing infrastructure, service instantation is really important. The ability to turn on a service when you're leveraging the cloud is literally just a click. It's the enablement of an entitlement that you now have access to. Because in our cloud, we're capable of keeping these services running, and the ability to move one service over to a new customer is very, very simple. This is the idea of a fully integrated system. Now, this is, of course, compared to traditional models where new systems are required for new services. And this is challenging because, number one, there's a whole new buying cycle. So if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, as someone who is organizing the group as a whole in terms of our IT organization, that buying cycle can be challenging. It may not fit into our current budget windows. Then, of course, there's the actual setup, new appliances, new configurations, new update processes, which means we have longer change control windows. Time, money, and effort. All of these things are in the excess when we want to move fast, and they are barriers to moving fast. With the cloud, you have a very quick way of turning on new services. If as an organization, you're looking to leverage advanced capabilities that you weren't able to take advantage of when you first deployed, turning those on can often happen within a day, within an hour in some cases, depending upon what exactly it is that you're setting up. And this is huge. This means you can respond very quickly. You can really take advantage of an agile group, and you can respond to the needs of today. Now, the other thing that I'd like to point out that, again, often overlooked when you think about cloud, and this is really an advantage of the Mojo architecture, more so than even just the cloud as a whole, is a flexible deployment option. This idea that I can take my management instance and I can move it on-prem if I need to. And a lot of what we're talking about today, and a lot of these advantages, the cloud powers them, but fundamentally, architecture is the driver for this type of differentiation. So when we talk about the ability to deploy on-prem, we're still taking advantage of a lot of the benefits that come from this particular approach. So we're gonna talk about Mojo architecture later on, but to keep that in mind and often overlooked, a flexible deployment option. So now we jump into complexity, and complexity is Uh, again, not complexity in the context of a complex interface. Right? Interfaces, they can change, they can evolve. What we're talking about is the complexity of keeping the system intact. In the cloud, all of these particular actions, all of these functions are just inherent to the cloud. So high availability, clustering, load balancing. These are all things that our team is trained to do from day one. The people that we look for have experience in these particular areas. They're focused on it. It's not a task that they have to learn on the job. It's not a task that is secondary to their primary task. On-prem, you have to train your resources, which means more time and more money. It means finding people that are, quite frankly, more expensive because of their experience here, but fundamentally, it's not their primary responsibility. So overall, you have a harder, it's much harder to stay reliable, to keep a system together because of all of these different components that are required in keeping the system intact. And this is where the cloud really has huge advantages. Now, when we look at security, I mentioned this before. Security is often looked at as one of the worst aspects of the cloud, or one of the areas where hesitation is born from. And that's just a fallacy. There's really actually a tremendous amount of effort put into cloud security, keeping data safe, keeping communication safe. And at Mojo Networks, we've done a tremendous amount to make sure that not just our data centers follow these particular processes. And when we talk about processes, we're talking about certifications like ISO 27001. We're talking about SSAE 16 certifications. We're looking at all the different metrics that we can measure against that really help to show that we're implementing strong practices around data encryption, so data at rest, data in movement, who has access to what. And actually, we at Mojo Networks have taken the effort to throw our own organization through the ISO 2001 certification. And this is not a common practice in the cloud Wi-Fi space. But what it means is that we're taking extra precautions to make sure that your data is safe and that your network as a whole is protected from data leakage and access. What that also means is that we run regular vulnerability assessments. We run scans across our system that help us to understand ports that are open at the simple level, but also making sure that we're running all of our new services through vulnerability assessments at the application layer and the network layer to ensure that any vulnerabilities that are out there, like, for example, the Heartbleed vulnerability that we talked about before, can be rectified very quickly. So security patches, we've built in automated methods to patch those particular processes. And what's really, really great about cloud is that the separation of management from control and even from data allows us to be very quick about these particular processes. We can run them without disrupting the edge. And that is not the case for many on-prem deployments where affecting the central command, the controller, can have negative impacts on your edge network. And so it's much more difficult to run these particular activities as a result. And so as we've talked through all of these benefits, you've probably connected the dots. They jump on top of each other. They're strongly intertwined with each other. They're not separate concepts in and of themselves, and they don't just affect each other. And so obviously economics is a major benefit, and it's because of all of the benefits we've talked about so far. To start, when you talk about raw dollars and cents, we can see that our hardware is significantly limited. We only need access points. And because our growth model is linear, we don't have to project. We don't have to think about and really make sure that we are accounting for capacity in the future, which means we don't have to buy excess. Our controllers are not being bought and used at 70%, 60% capacity. In the cloud, everything is operating with the fullest capacity. And because of that, you're looking at just a cloud subscription. So it's a simple line item in terms of a license, recurring cost that ensures access to all features, all functions, and all updates. We include maintenance. You don't have a separate maintenance cost on top of all of the different components because we're operating out of the cloud. So economically speaking, there are huge cost savings in moving to the cloud. And in some cases, it doesn't seem that way. We look at the difference between a CapEx and an OpEx purchase, and especially for these larger groups that are starting to evaluate, uh, what they're seeing more and more is that, yes, overall, huge cost savings that come from moving to the cloud, and really these reasons are why. So as you can see here, just a quick overview of the benefits that we talked about. And you can see that really as we move down the stack, we're really expanding. We're making what was previously unavailable or difficult to attain, that took a lot of careful planning, a lot of uh, budget cycles. Here we have the ability to really remove those barriers, to allow you to just plow forward and really focus on things that are most important. So let's talk a little bit about Mojo in particular. I want to share with you, first a little bit about who we are, and then we'll look at our architecture more in depth. As you can see, if you look at business as a whole and their needs for Wi-Fi, there's a spectrum that you can draw in. On the left, you have that enterprise campus, that large campus where we have a dense access point deployment, a large contiguous network. On the other end of the spectrum is our SMB, small deployments, single AP, multiple APs, and they're often powered by telcos and service providers as a result. It gives them the opportunity to distribute these advanced features at a cost that is acceptable by the SMB market. And then, of course, in between is distributed enterprise. So this is what we actually talked about, early adopters of the cloud, where we see K-12, where we see retail and restaurant, quick serve in particular, these groups that are highly distributed. They have a large appetite for access points, similar to an enterprise campus, but each individual location is really an SMB. I mean, you think about a group like Taco Bell, for example, 8,000 restaurants across the country, each restaurant itself a single business. So the cloud and Mojo architecture in particular was built from the ground up to support this entire spectrum of customer. And in fact, we have customers that live along this entire spectrum, from the enterprise campus through distributed enterprise and even SMB. And through SMB, we've been able to work with some very large telcos and service providers that leverage our architecture to distribute Wi-Fi to their SMB base. So it's designed to fit customers across the spectrum, and really built to handle this spread out deployment. So when we moved our architecture to the cloud and we really start to look at the different components, let's start by talking about the management plane. Right? So the management plane lives solely in the cloud. Here, what we have is access to all the various features that are required to develop and deploy, monitor, and troubleshoot my Wi-Fi infrastructure. So we have access to all of our functions for Wi-Fi access, all of our functions for Wi-Fi security, and all of our functions for Wi-Fi engagement. So a unified platform to gain access and to manage my network, centralized in the cloud. And what this means is that no matter how far you're distributed, no matter how large you are, you always have a single pane of glass to operate from. And then management traffic is sent on an individual basis from every single access point. This is an encrypted channel that's being passed. It's a continuous communication stream from access points to the cloud. But a really unique difference is the separation of the control plane. So we recognized early on, for those of you who know Mojo for a long time, know that we started in the world of wireless security, know that our system, to work as effectively as possible, each individual access point must be fully capable should it ever lose connection with the central console, with the cloud. For those who have deployed controller-based architectures, you know this is a big challenge with the controller architecture, is that controller access point communication, if that's ever interrupted, means down services, sometimes completely down services. This is challenging. So what we've done is we've distributed the control plane throughout our access points. They work with each other, they talk to each other, and they make decisions on their own. What that means is that there's zero loss of functionality should an access point in the cloud ever lose connectivity. This is a fundamental difference that really allows us to to really operate in all these different functions and to do so in a very reliable way. And then we talked about the data plane, and we talked about local breakout. This idea that my individual access points can drop that data onto the network, and then it can travel as it needs to in the most efficient way possible. We don't have a single bottleneck. We don't have to necessarily tunnel traffic throughout the network to a central point. We can, and if we desire to, whether in small cases or across the board, we can support this functionality. And we're creating new and better ways to do so. So we have more and more flexible options. But again, the key there is that you have the opportunity to choose. And this is very different. This is what the cloud brings to you. I mentioned zero loss of functionality during loss to connectivity in the cloud. This is a really key tenet, and this is what fundamentally gets me highly reliable networks with very minimal effort. So at this point, guys, I want to take a look, and I want to walk you through the Mojo interface and the Mojo cloud. More specifically, really give you a look at all the different elements that make up our cloud. While we won't go into any specific ideas too deeply, don't worry. We have other webinars for that. We have a lot that you can watch on demand, new ones coming up in the future. Of course, you can always reach out to your Mojo rep to get a more specified walkthrough. But let's take a look here. And we start by looking at Mojo Launchpad. So as you can see here, we have, from a single pane of glass that I've logged in, access to all of my services. Now, I, in particular, am a full admin, so I can see everything. But the beauty of the cloud is that we have a really easy way of delivering entitlement to create users that have very specific access, not just to certain applications or certain services, but also within those services. It's governed through what we call Mojo One, our single sign-on environment that allows us to create users. Excuse me, let me reload real quick. It allows me to create users and define either individual rules. For example, I can come in here, I can look at the service privileges for this particular user, and I can flip them on and off as needed. And even within certain services, I have the opportunity to really distribute what they can do. Is this particular user an administrator? Or are they just an operator, perhaps working from a support perspective? And even in that regard, should they have access to access management and access operations, security, or both? And where within the cloud should they be able to work? This gives us a really finely tuned role-based access control system. So especially for highly distributed environments, or for those environments, in particular higher education, where you tend to find a central IT organization and then spread out through various campuses, especially remote campuses, you have on the feet IT help and support individuals. We can separate out tasks and we can empower everybody in that chain to do what they need to do to monitor the network and to troubleshoot issues without extending permissions beyond what they need. As you can see here, we can also take this idea of service privileges and we can roll it into a profile. So with a profile, now I'm not setting individual permissions, I'm assigning a profile to any new user. We all know that there's a lot of fluidity in the IT organization as a whole, new people coming in, people leaving. So our ability to be very quick about providing new users with access very specific to what their role is can be built upon this profile system. It makes it really, really easy. And you'll see here that profiles can be assigned to both users and keys. The Mojo architecture is completely open, which means that we have an API that is exposed. It's built upon a RESTful architecture, which means that it interacts with common web verbiage like post and get. And we're the only cloud managed API that allows us to both push configurations as well as pulling data. And this is really significant. It means that we're operating in a modern language, really easy to configure and to build, but it also gives us complete control to build new workflows and to automate certain workflows. And we give you access through Mojo One to develop keys and to assign permissions to those keys. And of course, as you see here, we support actions like federated login, so we can connect to external systems using SAML 2.0. And this gives us the ability to integrate with external authentication systems. So if you want to distribute access through Active Directory or through some other means, we can do so using features like federated login. So a lot of control as it relates to access, and this really plays into not just the distributed nature and the centralized nature of management, but more specifically when we talk about security, this really gives us a lot of control over security. Now, for those of you who are watching as a managed service provider, we also give you a single pane of glass. But now, rather than logging in to any individual user account, we actually give you the ability to log in and manage all of your customers. So you see here that on the left, I have a list of my customers. And as I click into them, I have the opportunity, as we do a quick search here, you can see I can get my different customers. I can click into them, and I have access to their services. So this is huge. This gives me a lot of opportunity to be quick about jumping into various customers, helping them with various issues that they have, making sure that I'm monitoring at a very high level and having individual access. And this is because fundamentally our architecture is built upon a multi-tenant architecture that separates each individual customer at the database level. So from a managed service perspective, we want to give you the opportunity to dive in and operate with each individual customer without having to manage a spreadsheet of credentials. So let's dive into some specific services. We can start with Wireless Manager, which is fundamentally our key service, Wireless Manager, where I manage all of my requirements for wireless access and wireless security. You can see here that the first place I'm dropped is my dashboard. It gives me a look at and a picture of the health of my network. And it's fully customizable. I have the ability to create custom dashboards that give me different views. Each individual dashboard, or rather widget within the dashboard, can be customized. I can manage and look at specific SSIDs. I can look at different time windows. In some cases, I can even look at time over a long period. I can start to see that various graphs, for example, when I'm looking at data rates and utilization, in some cases, I can build this out to a very long period of time. So this really helps me to just get a really quick snapshot of what's going on. And if you look to the left, you'll see Mojo Navigator. Now, Mojo Navigator is a fundamental piece of the overall architecture. It is really the basis from which we build everything. It's a logical, hierarchical approach to Wi-Fi management, and it gives me an opportunity to build in some inherent automations that allow me to distribute policy at a very large scale. So here, as I start to build in, you're already seeing on the screen that everything is localized. So as I come into Los Angeles, for example, you can see I get very specific information on this network, and I can build up and look at all of my branch offices. I can look at my entire corporate infrastructure. And the way that I organize this is completely up to you. It's a logical approach. So whether it's regional, geographical, or logical separations, all these different aspects allow me to chunk my groups into very specific categories. And the beauty of the system is that nested folders inherit policies from their parent folders, which means that I can create single policies that can be distributed across all of my locations. And when I say all of my locations, I'm talking about tens of thousands of access points that can be governed by a single policy. Talk about IT agility, the opportunity for me to create a change in a policy once that can distribute to all of my access points. In many cases, not even requiring a reboot of the AP, but simply a flick on and off of the radio. In those cases, not even interrupting the session of the user on that radio. That is a huge benefit of the cloud, and only through the cloud do you have that type of singular approach to management. So this is a really big idea, and as we look at that and we see what does that management look like, well, we take a look at what it means to build a Wi-Fi profile, and you'll see that a lot of elements that are very particular to various networks, the ability to distribute security, whether it's through a pre-shared key or through 802.1x and all the different configurations that are required. Again, we're distributing the control plane through our access points. So each access point has these configurations local. When they receive these configurations, they're fully functional. and they continue to do so until a change is made. Should they ever lose connectivity with the central management console, they will continue to operate on that last known config. So they will continue to process these requests from a security perspective. They will continue to distribute data down the correct VLAN, or in the case of a NATed environment, they'll continue to communicate with each other so that a NATed network built upon our access points is maintained. And clients can still roam successfully, even if that larger WAN link goes down or something happens to prevent some or all of our access points from communicating. Another really key aspect is when we talk about optimization, the idea of automating optimization through RF optimization techniques. These too are being pushed down to access points and being handled through the control plane. Our access points make decisions based off information they're collecting, and they can respond in real time without the need for the cloud to analyze. This is really a product of the growing evolution of access points. They're stronger and they're faster. And more of the evolution of that access point is being centered in the chipset. It's a really powerful component to the access point, and it gives us the flexibility to really drive a lot of these functionalities down at the edge. Same thing goes with the firewall. A layer 3 through layer 7 firewall, a stateful firewall that can be used as a stopgap between the wireless network and the wired is fundamental, and it does not require any type of processing or analysis from a central component. It means it's fast and it's reliable. Now, another major component to the Mojo Cloud is our guest manager. Here we have a central repository for really two primary functions. Function number one is the collection and the analysis of all of that rich Wi-Fi data in the form of Wi-Fi analytics. It's my opportunity to start looking at larger trends. And in some cases, it's not just about who's connecting. That information is important, don't get me wrong, but it's just as valuable to be able to see who is around your network, who is probing, what noise is there surrounding any individual location or group of locations. And once again, we can see here that we're built upon that same Mojo Navigator. So again, that's very foundational component that spreads itself across the Mojo Cloud. And you can see here that by looking at these trends, I can start to pinpoint and pick out aberrations to the trend. What happened on these days? Did we control it or did we not? Right? These are the types of components that are really important to us to see, because when we think about monitoring and troubleshooting, without this type of perspective, we may not be able to correlate. We may not be able to connect the dots between disparate activities. This gives us opportunity to really take a look at the big picture and zero in, to ask a question we wouldn't normally ask, and in doing so, find an answer that we wouldn't have found otherwise. So this is really fundamental. And then, of course, as we move into our guest components, we have the opportunity here to really look at captive portals. But these are captive portals on a whole new level. Our captive portals are able to support a multitude of authentication plugins, the various methods by which your guests will connect to these networks. In some cases, they're not about your guests. In some cases, it's about supporting vendors and contractors on a long-term basis. Through our guest book, we can distribute credentials that are timed, that have their own controls, whether it's the number of devices that can use them, the amount of time they can spend on the network, how long they have to wait until they get back on the network. It's well beyond the simple free Wi-Fi, guest Wi-Fi component. Guest Manager gives us a lot of control to build these networks and to control them, to implement plugin QoS components. Determining how much data rate an individual has based off the methods by which they connect is a huge advantage when I'm creating guest networks for multiple people. And when I'm really trying to put control to this network, I don't want it overtaking my core business. And we look at some of the ancillary apps that are on the Mojo Cloud. We have things like Mojo Canvas, which is my opportunity to develop and design stunning splash pages all from a central location to distribute them throughout my environment, and to do so without the need for individually configuring systems or for hosting it myself. Uh, we are moving away from those really basic HTML pages, text, checkbox, go through. And we're starting to incorporate dynamic content, images, and buttons that can link us to other places, and a lot of control to do so. Splash pages that are built using HTML5 that are fully optimized for smartphones and tablets. And the control that we have is significant when it comes to moving various items around and determining which buttons we've made available. We can also look at items like Mojo Packets, which is a graphical packet analyzer built upon the cloud, or built upon our cloud architecture, and it gives us an opportunity to very quickly and easily debug an issue. Take a packet capture that would otherwise take hours and hours to analyze, would take very specific individuals to do so, and we can pop it into Mojo Packets, and the first thing we come to is a dashboard that really provides me with direction. We look at all the clients as a part of that capture, and we can really zero in on this suspect device, this device that had 2 packets that are showing data failure. It's indicative of a device that we need to be focusing on. You can see here we can get performance overviews, right? Really key information about clients with lowest star value, percentage of retransmissions, AP statistics as well. We can look at this particular networks that are being picked up and look at all the data that we're collecting so we can zero in on the most important information. And then finally, when we want to take a look at the actual trace itself, specialized on a particular device or access point, even that is strongly visualized. We can see a common trend, and we can see breaks in the trend. We can zero in on those areas. We can look at the individual packets, but it's really designed to help catch my eye and point me in the direction so that fundamentally I can troubleshoot an issue faster. I can do it with more preciseness. I can start to really get a feel for what a natural communication looks like so that I can quickly understand what isn't natural. And of course, the cloud has built-in collaboration. So my ability to share these traces, even with those who are not a part of the Mojo cloud, so that I can extend my base and I can get help from anyone, friends, colleagues, message boards, you name it. And so with that, I want to thank you all for your time today. I want to give you an opportunity to answer some questions. I'm sure there were lots that popped up. Of course, we took a high-level view of this particular architecture, but there's a lot of opportunities for us to dive deeper. So with that, I want to open up the floor to questions.
Great. Thank you, Sean. That was a wonderful presentation. And for everyone on the call today, this has been recorded, so we will also make this available on our website shortly. A couple questions that are coming in here, and I'll give time for everyone else to start typing. First question here, Sean, how many access points can be managed from a single console on that Mojo cloud?
So that's a really interesting question. The real answer is there is no limit. Truly, from a single interface, I have the opportunity to manage countless access points. Now, to peel that away a little bit, it's an understanding that, one, our cloud is completely virtualized. This is a fundamental step to creating a strong cloud architecture. And as such, we've also built in the ability for our individual instances to graph together. So when we talk about multi-tenancy, this is the concept of super-tenancy. And this is how we get to that countless management number, because a single customer may hit a maximum capacity on any individual instance from an access point perspective, depending upon where they are, how much data is incoming. These are all things that our cloud ops team is constantly monitoring. Should that customer need to grow, for us, it's a simple matter of spinning up a new instance and grafting it to the central instance. You create a parent or a central instance. All subsequent instances that may be grafted can inherit policies from that central. And so you have the opportunity to either look at these individual pieces, especially if you're a global enterprise. You may find it more valuable, and maybe even due to data registry laws, you may find it better to allow for certain parts of the globe to view just their particular access point infrastructure. But we have the opportunity to graph these together so that from a single console, you can truly manage countless access points from a single pane.
Great, thank you, Sean. Another question, does Mojo have a solution to move the data plane into the cloud?
So at this point, no. And we really wouldn't want to, quite frankly, because having that data pass through our cloud, it opens up a lot of security holes. It also involves a lot more effort to make sure that that data is moving safely. And probably just as important is that it opens up a lot of latency to have all of the data travel back through our cloud just to re-enter the greater internet to get to its host would cause some latency issues. So the answer to that is no. We're not looking at ways that we can have data travel back through our cloud, but we are looking at ways where we can take that local breakout and we can pass it to very specific endpoints. We have some ways we can do it today. We're always looking at ways we can do that better and more to give more flexible options.
Okay. Another question around the cloud. Who is responsible for upgrading the cloud servers?
So at Mojo Networks, we have a cloud operations team that is fully responsible for the maintenance and the upkeep of our cloud. So they are working round the clock. They work in spread out across their team. They're here 24/7, and they are watching for any instance where the cloud needs to be upgraded. We at Mojo run quarterly major updates. We tend to have minor updates that follow about a month following that major update to bring in some choice features. But then, of course, security patches that need to be applied given new vulnerabilities that are found or any bugs that may appear. And so our cloud ops team, which are Mojo Networks employees, are responsible for that upkeep.
Great, thank you. Some more questions around the cloud. Is the cloud designed to be multi-tenant?
Absolutely. That was one of the first elements that was required for a successful cloud adoption is that idea of multi-tenancy. So that's the idea that these instances that I referred to, I talked about in the context of super tenancy, where one individual customer may have access to multiple instances. But really, truly, the vast majority of customers are living in a multi-tenant environment. So they have their own section of an individual instance separated at the database layer. So their data resides solely within their account. It does not touch data of any other customer on that particular instance. But because of that, we are constantly at full capacity. And this is a good thing. This means that we're leveraging our instances to their fullest component. We're not leaving any capacity unused. And that means that our costs are able to come down. And that's fundamentally how the economics of the cloud really benefit the end customer, is our ability to pass those savings on. So yes, our cloud is designed to be multi-tenant, and the vast majority of our cloud is operating in that capacity.
Great. Last question I see coming in here. When additional resources are required to manage additional devices, would myself as the customer have to request and manage, or does Mojo take care of that?
We take that on 100%. So we know exactly the amount of resources that are required to power your environment. So the only step taken by any individual customer is the step that is required to grow their environment. I need X number of new access points based off what I had before. And then we have processes, many automated, some that do require oversight from a manual intervention to apply new resources to change the way that an individual instance is operating to make sure that it has the resources it needs. So that is fully automated, no input from the customer required.
Great, fantastic. That's all the questions I see for now. I'll give it just another minute if anyone wants to submit a question while I review the free access point. So for all of those attendees today on the live webinar, we are offering a free Mojo access point and 1 year of cloud services. There are some qualification requirements. For all of our valued partners, resellers, and distributors, you're not eligible. For anyone who has received a free access point in years past, you are also uneligible. But if for some reason you don't qualify for the free access point, we would love to still have you test out our products so we can work with you to do a free 14-day trial as well. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact us at myrep@mojonetworks.com. We will also be following up with you pending qualification to confirm your shipping details. So make sure to answer our emails or phone calls as we're just trying to make sure we're going to ship the access point to the right place. Thank you all for attending today. I know we've mentioned this. Everyone's schedules are incredibly busy, so we do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us for this webinar. And we look forward to seeing you on a future one. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, everybody.